evening, everybody, and welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone. It's a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops. My name is Charlie. Call sign is November Juliet 7 Victor. And tonight it's just me and our guest, Dan, KC7MSU, and Brian, W7JET. Both have conflicts, and so I'm going solo, although it won't be solo. Let me introduce you to tonight's guest. I'm pleased to introduce you to Dennis, 86DM.
Hello.
And
How's it going?
Glad you're here, Dennis. Thank you so much for joining. Also, a warm welcome to those of you watching in the chat room. This is kind of a little unorthodox or a little unusual for our stream, having just me and Dennis. So I encourage you to pop some questions and comments in chat, and we'll probably try to address those a little bit more than we normally do in other episodes. Finally, I encourage you guys to support Dennis's channel as we go on and talk a little bit about that and his podcast, which you'll talk a little bit about. So let's get caught up here. It's just me today getting caught up. So what I've been up to, well, I've been sick actually. The last, I guess this last week I was okay. I had a week of finally recovering, but before that, the 2 weeks before that, between now and Thanksgiving, I was sick and didn't really do a whole lot. And so you can probably notice from my channel and my social media, I was pretty quiet, and now I'm kind of getting back into the groove a little bit. But what was a Friday, I went up and did a couple of summits on the air activations, get the air going through the chest a little bit and getting back out after being sick, and so it was feeling pretty good. So but that's kind of what I've been up to, catching up on some holiday stuff. We have stuff coming up like Wednesday. We're going to see what is it? The Christmas Carol at Hale Center Theater here in Chandler. So it'll be Christmas is just right around the corner, and so let me just say right now, I wish everybody has a happy, Merry Christmas as we move into the holiday season and a good New Year. And so with that, let's go ahead and get over to Dennis. Dennis, what have you been up to the last little bit?
Oh, well, first of all, I want to say thanks again for having me on the show. I got to remember to record this. Hold on one second.
No problem.
I'm going to cross-post this over to Hamdom Thoughts, the podcast. So I completely forgot about that.
No problem.
I didn't even ask you if I could do that, but yeah. Put you on the spot live.
You can do that. You can do that.
Sure. But what have I been up to lately? Well, in terms of just ham radio world, it's still been just battery production for me. A lot of hams have been asking me for Denco batteries or Denco battery kits, and so I've just been trying to keep up with the demand. And not that I am complaining. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it does take up pretty much my free time. And other than that, I don't know if I should. Well, I guess I could talk about it, but I was recently interviewed by the ARDC to help out with their 44net infrastructure. And if you don't know what 44net is, we could probably talk about it a little bit. It's kind of like the IP reservation for hams that is largely unused. And the ARDC actually owned the whole /8 or something
they have
of that IP allocation, which netted them millions of dollars by selling like half of those allocations. They don't really disclose how much it is exactly, but I think people have found out and are sharing it privately or in forums. But anyway, they use that for grants. But the other part of it is there's still millions of 44net IP addresses available. It's just that it's incredibly difficult to get on the 44net and use it, right? So I tried flashing one of those MikroTik routers and tried getting on the 44net and then bridging it to an Arden node in my internal mesh going on. And I just found a lot of problems with that. So the funny thing is I was at Huntsville and I ran into John Kemper, who is like the director of IT for ARDC. And we got to talking about how he contributed to the WIN network in California, which I think may span all the way to Arizona. I'm not sure. But and then we started talking about how I had such a hard time with the 44net, and he's like really into that. And So recently I got interviewed, and they asked me to be part of their technical advisory committee, since
Oh, that's
that's kind of like
fantastic.
my wheelhouse. It's
Yeah.
I work a lot with networks and systems and configuration of internet applications. So that's kind of like my related to my day job. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. They're a
interesting
great
development
organization.
for 2024.
Yeah,
It's
congratulations on
volunteer.
that.
Yeah,
They are a great organization. They do the thing I know about. I mean, I know I've kind of am familiar a little bit with what you're talking about, that side of the house, but I'm more familiar with the grants, the grant applications that they
yeah,
receive, and the money that they grant to anybody who has anything that furthers the development of ham radio, which is so they're great in that respect too. So
yep.
so
That's what everyone really knows the ARDC about, is because they fund a lot of great ham radio efforts, and
yeah,
there's a grant application process and all that. But really, the whole kind of reason that they're an organization is because of this ownership of this set of IPs.
right,
Lee in the chat asks, I thought they sold much lower number than half of the 44 net, and I don't actually know for sure how many.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that might be true. They might have sold just a little portion. But in any case, like even recently, I got a notice from AWS, Amazon Web Services, that they would be charging me for my public IP that I have. I have one of them. And
Yeah.
I was just like, wow. I mean, they're getting that scarce that, platforms that used to give them for free, like AWS, are now restricting them, which is, or not restricting them, but charging people for them. It's kind of like, now you got to pay for this resource. So
Yeah, that's
um,
crazy.
that's kind of like the gold rush. You just kind of stake your claim in the early days, and all of a sudden you're sitting on this resource that everyone wants now that it's running out.
Yep. Cool. Well, that sounds like you've been busy. I haven't really talked to you personally for quite a while, so it'll be nice to get caught up. I do know that there are people watching who actually don't know much about you, Dennis.
Okay,
We have listeners who are being introduced to you for the first time. So we got to talk a little about your background and kind of who you are a little bit, and then we'll dive into some of the other topics that we have chosen for today. Welcome
sure.
to Adam, who's in chat.
The real Adam.
The real Adam, not yeah. It's a long running joke that everybody refers to Dennis as Adam. They
Yeah.
call him Adam, probably because of his call sign 86DM.
Yes.
Maybe I don't know, but
Yeah, I
anyways,
even acknowledge that in my QRZ page now. I say, hi, I'm Dennis, but people call me Adam
yeah,
because of my call sign. It looks like Adam.
yeah,
And I said, I'm fake Adam, but then there are other real Adams. And one of them is in the chat now, K6ARK.
yeah. Cool. All right. Well. So Dennis, tell us a little bit. So you live in California. Have you lived in California your whole life?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the majority of my life I've lived in California. I grew up a Navy brat. Of course, I'm a Gen X. So um, just having lived all over the world, we kind of settled in Northern California. So I'm originally from the Bay Area, and um, moved to the Central Valley when I got married, and pretty
How
much,
how'd you meet your wife?
well, we were actually old high school classmates, and then we kind of reconnected at the 20th high school reunion. So
Are you serious?
um,
Wow. You just like,
we didn't really hang out in high school, but
but you like were
yeah,
sitting there eating a crumb cake, and you look across, and there's your soon to be wife over
yes.
there, huh? You're like, oh wow, she's looking
But
good these days.
yeah, just think how things played out. It just
Yeah.
we reunited after a high school reunion, and from there. But
Cool.
anyway, um, so military brat. So you can imagine what kind of life that was. Just every two
Yes.
years, just uprooting and going to a
Yes.
new place. But we settled upon the Bay Area, and I went to high school, and then later, post college, just spent most of my time in the Bay Area, and then um, kind of got into ham radio in that environment. So The Bay Area is kind of it has a lot of repeaters, and so I spent a lot of time as a tech just hopping on different repeaters in the Bay Area. I didn't really think much beyond it. I didn't feel the need to get on HF really because I
Right.
felt like I was in the middle of all these comms that I didn't really feel like I needed much more of. And
Yeah.
my big thing, even back then, back in like the late 90s and early 2000s, was I wanted to get on Packet, but I didn't know how. And there were no, like, the internet was just a burgeoning thing. So I didn't really know how to search for packet stations and databases of packet frequencies. And so bought myself a Cantronics KPC Plus, I think it was. And basically I just picked some random simplex frequency and I just wanted to hopefully be able to listen and find a packet station. You think about these things as like, how did we connect before the internet, right? How did we even
Right.
look things up back then? But I was
Totally.
unsuccessful. I couldn't find anything to do with packet out there. I would be constantly, yeah, I had my scanners, and I was just trying to listen for, you know, digital sounding signals, and maybe I would land on something that I could read, but really it was nothing. And then ended up returning my Kentronics TNC and uh, just kind of stuck to voice because that at least there's repeater book. You could buy the little physical repeater book and look those up.
Yeah. So
So
so you were interested in Packet probably because of your career a little bit? I mean,
yes, so I mean I
uh,
had been, from the start, pretty much the start of the internet becoming commercialized. That's when I jumped in full bore. I loved being on computers. I wasn't one of those early BBS guys. I mean, I had exposure to BBSs and like CompuServe channels and chats, but I wasn't really that early. But I was in the initial, like, the days of ICQ and AOL and Prodigy and CompuServe. That's kind of when I made my entry. And during that time, um, I was like, people really pay me to make a web page. It's like people really pay me to set up their computer. I love doing that anyway. And so
yeah.
that's how I got started in the career. Is that I just loved hacking on computers anyway,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe people would actually pay me to do it. So that's where I focused
So
all
you've been
my job apps.
in the career field in the computer field since the 80s then, huh?
Well, it would have been like the 90s.
Early 90s?
Yeah. Maybe like mid
Mid
90s to early
95-ish.
2000
Yeah.
.com era kind of
Okay.
thing. So,
Okay, cool. And so what field in computers did you latch onto that you thought you could really make some good money? I mean, like, what are you doing right now? I guess you're networking, I guess, right?
well, now I'm just a software engineering manager, so I basically don't do anything. I'm just
Oh boy.
no, really. I mean, I used to be, I used to code, and it was mostly web applications, internet applications, but I did a lot of stuff regarding like setting up people's firewalls and routing and all that kind of stuff. So system setup as well. But at a certain point, they realized, okay, Dennis can actually write good documentation, which is unusual for an engineer, stereotypically. And so they started putting me more in front of the customers or in front of the clients, and from there, I started becoming more of like management, and then they asked me to stop coding and doing more, forward or public facing things, and then now here I am. So
Yeah.
essentially, if you like go to my Twitter, you'll see one of the things I put in there is nerd boss, and I'm pretty much just the boss of nerds. I'm no longer really a nerd myself. And
I would
which
quickly.
brings us to ham radio. It's kind of
Yeah.
like my outlet because I do have that nerd urge, and I don't want to let go of that. It took me a very long time to let go of coding. I didn't want to let go of my technical side in my job, but I eventually had to face that and say, yes, okay, I have to trust someone else to do the code, and I just have to try to steer the ship. and so I needed something to apply my nerd tendencies to, and I landed on hardware via ham radio. So
Yeah.
that's kind
So
of
yeah,
cool.
you're specific about hardware, in fact,
Yeah.
which is cool. So we were talking earlier before we began the show that there are several tracks or focuses that you have right now that you in your life that take up your time, and they're not all ham radio. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I was kind of conflicted. Uh, just this past month, I've just been thinking a lot about why, because I tried after Pacificon to just really get back into YouTube. It's kind of like you have to admit it. The YouTubers bunch is kind of a peer pressure club in a sense,
Yeah.
because everyone who watches it, you hear from Josh, you hear from Jason, HR 2.0, they're like, just put something out there, right? And so you feel compelled to like, oh, I need to be a YouTuber too. I need to share my perspective, and so I was thinking about that. I was thinking I was going to you put some effort into my YouTube channel and kind of get it to take off a little bit. But I just couldn't. Like, I don't know if it was inertia or if it was just, I just didn't have I couldn't visualize what I wanted to do. But in the end, I kind of broke it down and I said, what are the things that I'm trying to do? Like, what are all the things I'm trying to do? And I tried to make a list. And one of those was YouTube. Another one is kind of like technical writing articles or things like that. I just shared earlier, trying to be a volunteer for the ARDC. That was one of the things that, one of the endeavors I committed myself to. I'm into music. I like making music, right? So electronic music production, physical stuff. I don't really go to a gym, but I do go to martial arts training many times a week. That is a commitment in itself. I could just do that and nothing else, and that would take all my time. Then, of course, there's all the different areas in ham radio that I wish I could do. All kinds of things, all kinds of new gear that I wish I could try out. All kinds of. I just saw some videos just talking about upgrading your 705 with a new board. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. I don't know when I could do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the production side, I got all these batteries I got to make because people want them. And that running a business in itself, that requires coordination with vendors, negotiations, sourcing, inventory control, all this stuff that, I didn't really think about when I started. And then there's all the other kind of like side things, though, I wish I could work on type things. Like, I would love to get some kind of like pop-up camper, right? I wish I could get into that life, go to Quartz Fest and all that kind of stuff. And then another thing that I was thinking about is just my whole, I've always been a cypherpunk since the early days of the internet. And if you don't know what that is, that's more like privacy and security nerd, and how to incorporate that into some of the stuff that I'm producing, right? I really truly believe that, we need to maintain our privacy. And a lot of people just kind of say, oh, well, that's not the world now. But I think the people who are saying that will really come to regret saying that when, their full life is kind of on display and scrutinized by some future judge, right? I think that we need to be making steps now to ensure that our privacy is protected in the future. Yeah. And I find that very important personally. And I think that that in itself is kind of like an endeavor that I wish I could devote more time to. So I could go on, but there's just a lot of different paths. And I feel like, all right, making a YouTube video about building a battery or going up, and making contacts, it just kind of doesn't feel like something that I would get a lot of satisfaction out of, right? Because one, it's already being done, and two, it's just there's so many other things in my life that I wish that I could be working on. And so that's kind of the problem. I have the podcast, and a lot of people complain to me that when's the next episode? And really, this is the problem. This is why.
Yeah, totally makes sense to me, Dennis. And I kind of, I not kind of, I do understand what you're talking about. I want to put it out into chat too. Those of you who are listening in chat, we want to hear what you have to say about this dilemma. Do you also have a bunch of different irons in the fire, and finding that it's hard to focus on one, and that, like, because you're trying to spread yourself too thin, you can't really do anything great? And if so, or even if not, what might you suggest to people who are struggling like that? What I also have kind of some of the same struggles. I have a lot of other interests outside of ham radio, so let's hear what you guys have to say about that. And while you guys are putting your comments there in chat, let's talk a little bit about your company, Dennis, because some people who are listening don't know that you are really a great battery person. We had a discussion about the fact that talking about batteries can be kind of boring. And I tend to agree in a little bit. I mean, some people, those people who don't know a lot about battery technology, obviously they'll find it interesting. But like you said, it's been done so many times and stuff like that that it becomes kind of boring, I guess. But
Well, it's probably boring to me because it's all I talk about.
right. So, but I want to at least touch a little bit on your company, kind of how it came to be and what you're doing right now with it. Because I think, if I understand correctly, it started as just a joke. If I'm not
Yes,
mistaken, it did.
it
Right.
was entirely a joke. In
Yeah.
fact, even
So
when I
take us
went
back
on
there.
HRCC and we built a battery together with Josh, he introduced me as the Denco CEO, and I'm like, you didn't tell everyone that was a joke, you know?
Yeah.
He's like,
So,
oh well,
so
but
take
it
us
was
back to
kind
the
of it
beginning
was
there.
prophetic because later I did really become the CEO of Denco.
Right. Take us
But
back to
yes,
the
the
beginning.
company. And I can credit. He's in the chat right now. K8MRD, Ham Radio Tube. Um, so I was starting making these batteries maybe in 2018, 2019. I can't remember exactly when, but I would share pictures of them in our little group, which we call JerryNet. And even K8MRD, he made one too. He made like this nice headway build, which was pretty powerful. And I think it was like 8 or 10 or 15 amp hours. I can't remember. But um, so we were like, for us, this was all new. It's like, wow, this is cool. You can make your own battery and you can make it to the specs you want to make it to. And so I started doing it over and over. Like I would go to Battery Hookup or AliExpress and just buy cells and just try out a new way of putting things together. And a lot of these experiments, I would realize, okay, I don't really have a purpose for this. So I'm just going to give them away. So I would send one to, various JerryNet members. I think Charlie, I gave you one as well, just a
Yes.
tiny one.
Yep.
But then at a certain point, I think K8MRD said, okay, when's your latest Denco battery? And everyone started calling them Denco batteries. And so I made a fake website of a fake company called Denco. And then I started posting pictures of all the different iterations of that battery
So Denco is a
build.
derivation of Dennis
Dennis's
Company.
Co. Yeah, Dennis's company.
Yeah.
And then whenever people would ask me, can I buy one of these off of you? I just didn't want to deal with the whole sales channels thing. And, you know, these again were experiments. I didn't feel like confident that they were finished products. I just felt like I put together a kit in a haphazard way, and now someone wanted to buy that. It's like, no, I what if it blows up? What if it fails? And like, well,
Yes.
not blows up. I know it wouldn't do that, but I mean, it's like and in fact, the one that I had sent to K8MRD quite a while back has failed. And so I sent him some parts just recently to like resurrect the thing. But so during that iterative time, um, every time I talk more about it, people would ask me, "Can I buy one?" Or "Do you have a kit? Can you share how? Can you make a video on how to do this so I could try it?" And can you send me the parts list? And finally, in the beginning of 2023, I was like, well, why don't I actually get everything together and just sell these?
Right.
And initially, my thought was I can get the specs and have some manufacturer actually make them for me, and I would just resell them, right? But that proved to be a lot harder than I thought, mostly because of quality control and working with overseas vendors. It was just really a nightmare. So I'm like, well, in order for it to be good, I need to build it myself. So now I've locked myself into this like really high maintenance, lots of labor, um, slow process of testing everything that I build and then listing it on the website. And that's how I sell them. That's why
Oh.
people now are mad at me because stuff is never in stock on my website.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm just like, well, that's just the nature of the beast. If you want a crappy battery, then I can just say that there's 50 available and not test them and just send them out. But
No, we don't want that.
everything that I build, I want some degree of assurance that it's built well and that it will work well under the conditions that I put on the website. So
Is your camera working?
What's that?
Is your camera working? Can you show us the batteries?
I don't think no, I'm sorry.
Well, okay. At the very
I have
least,
an overhead cam, but it's not working. But I can show
hold
you
it up and show. Yeah,
some of
that.
the stuff.
Yeah.
So this is like so I have a new thing, and it's a kit, and this is what I'm focusing on now, mostly because of laziness. I don't want to build whole batteries, so I just kind of make everyone build them themselves. So this is one part of the kit. It's
So what's in there?
It's a battery management system, but if you look closely, it says Denco on it.
Good.
Yeah. So I've worked with one manufacturer who puts together DALI BMSs. This is a 20 amp BMS. And I said, well, can you make those for me and put my logo on it? And they're like, yeah. So I have a Denco BMS now. It's really a DALI BMS, but pretty reliable BMS.
Where can people find this kit?
If they go to shop.denco.enterprises is the URL. And I don't have a capability to put a link in the chat, but
yeah,
maybe you can do that.
Let me just pull this over and see if I can pull it up. So tell it to me again.
I'll put it in our private chat here. Shop.denco. And yeah, that's the fun part of that is that you get to build this yourself. I do the part that people don't really want to invest in doing, which is spot welding these nickel strips on the pack. No one wants to really buy a spot welder if they're just going to build one or two batteries.
Right.
Those are so I do that for you. I test the battery cells themselves. So every cell that goes through me has gone through at least a 1 cycle test. So I can determine the capacity. Good. But I've even started working with a cell manufacturer. I don't know if you'll focus on this, but I don't think you can see that. But it says Denco.
The blue cell there.
Right up there. It says Denco. Let me see. Even my own eyes are horrible. But so even the cells themselves are branded Denco. And you get everything you need from pair of power pole contacts, all the wires, the BMS, the pack, the shrink wrap, the branding, everything. And then there's a fairly comprehensive instruction sheet that you can get. And from there, you are able to put together your own Denco battery.
And that's on the same website?
Yes.
That's in the chat. Cool. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from there, I also build these for people who like, if it was me approaching this and I heard, oh yeah, someone's making these kind of out of their own garage batteries that seem like they have the specs I need, I wouldn't want to build it myself.
Okay.
I would
Yeah.
want that person to build it. So I do also sell the completed batteries, but I think the popular thing right now is definitely the kits, because I don't think you can find a kit anywhere else.
I don't think so either. That's
Like if
awesome.
you wanted to build a battery right now, you just pretty much have to research how to build a battery, and then you have to source everything. So that's the need I'm trying to fulfill right here, is that I'm trying to get all that out of the way so that you can just get to building your battery.
That's perfect. Cool. All right, let's go back to the question that we posed earlier. I can't even remember exactly what it was. Something along the lines of, if you got, do you have too many irons in the fire, and if so, or if not, what's a suggestion to overcome that? Let's start with the first one here. It's from Chuck T. He says, "Do you do what you enjoy doing? Time isn't infinite." Yeah.
Yep.
So I would agree there. That's absolutely true. And so it's a matter of, what if you enjoy doing 50 different things? I guess is whatever you do most, whatever you enjoy most, I guess, right? Is that how you choose, or
Yeah.
or is it? I mean, because sometimes the things you enjoy most aren't necessarily the things that are for the greater good or that have the biggest impact in the world. So, I mean, it depends on, I guess, your maybe a little bit on your moral code and the things that you feel like are uh, you want to use as criteria for you to decide what you're going to do. I don't know.
Yep. I feel like a few people have found their niche, and it fits perfectly with like the YouTube model, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people just love going out and making contacts, or they really love the adventure of grid hunting with satellites, or they really love, like in your case, CW and soda, and you just love
Yep.
being outdoors. Um, and so that fits very well with like a vlog style, or cinematic style, or even live stream style YouTube presence. Um, for me, it just hasn't clicked that way. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why my YouTube channel, despite having crossed 1,000 subscribers recently, is still at, still needing like 3,000 watch hours, because really the channel itself is dead. It hasn't really had that
Yeah.
much activity.
Yeah.
And I don't see it changing.
That's
As of right now, I don't see that changing.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Ham Radio Tube. I'm not sure who that
That's
is.
Mike, K8RMRD.
Oh, he changed his. That's right. He changed his
Yeah.
KMRD. Yeah, cool. He says, I just talked to Kevin from BioNO for an hour on the phone the other day, and it seemed like 5 minutes. I guess he's pointing out that while it might be boring for some, it's not for others, I guess.
Yep. I actually talked with Kevin at Pacificon. He didn't know who I was, though, but he had no idea I was doing corporate espionage. I was just trying to find out. No, I was interested in buying one of his 6 amp hour batteries.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Just because that's what I sell, and I wanted to see, side by side. And
Right.
But he did. That's the one that he didn't have. So.
Mark W4MPS says, I'm 77 and I'm still working on my list of things I wanted to do when I was 35. Well, I guess,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, Mark, just imagine if on top of all that list of stuff that you want to do and you haven't gotten to yet, you got a bunch of friends who are always on YouTube saying you should post your stuff to YouTube. It's kind of like this pressure that you feel. And
yeah, I think Mark has done a little of that. I know
yeah.
him well. He's been on some
Okay.
activations, and so he's attempting that here and there. So he knows, I think. He also says, don't sweat it, one day at a time. Hams never seem to get bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then here's Kyle. Let's see if I can find his.
A0Z Kyle.
Yeah. I have a lot of hobbies and I don't have time to do all of them. I do what I can. Some of them take a lot of time. Some I get bored quickly. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
agree with
Kyle
that.
is another one that whenever I watch his videos about Node Red, I'm like, I need to get into that, but then I never have the time to do it.
Also, though, a good point is that I'm sure, just like you with batteries, he's the same way with Node Red, right? He's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
he probably is like talked about it so much that maybe he wants to move on to other things. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're that
Yeah.
way, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Is that I think every live stream I've been on, I've talked about it. So
Yeah.
to me, I feel like if you don't know about what I have to talk about by now, you live under a rock.
Yeah, well,
But you know,
there may be quite a few viewers here that do, but okay, Scott 75, Scout 75. I mean, I have had too many irons in the fire. Ended up just abandoning the ones that I didn't find time for. Now I focus on what I enjoy the most. I tend to stick to them more. So that's another vote for just do what you enjoy. That's good.
yeah.
45 Auto says, I have a hard time remembering what I learned about a subject earlier today. It's like starting a new hobby every day. Well, that's good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we have a question from Lee. Why did Dennis open Denco to the public after I bought my portable radios
Sorry.
batteries?
Sorry about that, Lee.
All right. And Lee's funny, isn't he? Let's see. And then James Hannibal says, hey, Charlie, throw the Denco website on the chat. Oh, yeah, he's talking about the chat. That's in there. I think that's it for those comments.
Cool.
So that's pretty good. Definitely too many irons in the fires. One more from Patrick. I definitely have too many irons in the fire and more interest than I will ever have the time and money to pursue. Yep, that's it. So, and I feel the same way. I really try. I have a goal in mind for my YouTube channel and for my social media. I never reach it. I mean, I've had to scale back from when my original thought was I was going to have put out at least a video a month, and then also do a live stream once a week, not a month. I was going to put out a video once a week, and then also have an interview once a week. And as you know, I've scaled that back quite a bit, and still I'm at that edge right now where that's about all I can do. And so, I have time for that, and it's because I make time. But some of the other things that I'd like to do, for example, I really love building kits, and I haven't been. I have a kit sitting over here on my bench that I haven't touched in probably 2 months, and it's probably 2/3 of the way done, maybe even 3/4 of the way done, but it's just where I stopped and haven't got back to it yet. So
yeah,
it's a little frustrating, but yeah, there's no time, right?
I mean, I think that I think about some of the people I used to watch, like Tech Gear Junkie is one of the people I think about. Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of great videos when you'd go out and do soda or just different activations. And, the guy, he is a classic example of someone who he's nerding out. He took a break and made a music album, and it's really good.
Yeah,
and then
Greg, isn't it his name, Greg?
Yeah, Greg. And I forget, I think his band name is GM Beatnik.
Yeah.
But he produced this album, and then he started getting into astronomy, and now he does if you find Tech Gear Junkie on Twitter, you can see a lot of his amateur astrophotography. It's like mind-bogglingly good photos of space. Like, I can't believe he gets that stuff from on the ground with an amateur telescope. But yeah, he's an example of someone I look at that has lots of interests and doesn't quite mesh with, the ham radio or YouTube world.
Yep.
And but impressive nonetheless. Like, wow, the things that he's doing are just they blow my mind. Yeah. Another person that comes to mind is the Tech Prepper.
Yes.
Like, he's very clearly ham adjacent. He doesn't profess to be like a contacts, chaser or a contester or anything like that. I mean, he uses ham radio as a means to what he wants to accomplish with his lifestyle. And right now he's doing a whole separate series about, just DMR, and he's using a business license for radio for that. And it's like, it's really interesting stuff, but it has nothing to do with like all the stuff we talk about.
Right.
Other than the fact that he's using an anytone. That's probably the only overlap, is that he's using a brand we're familiar with, but it's like a whole different area of radio that he's talking about right now.
And that's kind of what the topic is a little bit today. We wanted to talk about ham radio adjacent, and that's a perfect example of ham radio adjacent as the Tech Prepper, whom I know well, and I've interacted with him quite a bit as well, and he's actually really smart, and also has a lot of interests and hobbies and directions that he goes in. And so, but I'm curious what if we put it into words, I mean, I think people already are kind of getting what we're talking about, but if you were to put it into words, what would you say ham radio adjacent is to you?
I think it's kind of like what you described. It's just uh, there are so many things that ham radio could be a part of, and it's just I think that anyone who's ham adjacent is really looking at ham radio as an integration point to something else that they're doing in their life. Um, and again, so I mentioned that I became a manager, so I felt the need to still nerd out on something, and so I that's what really that coincided with me becoming like a general and an extra as a ham radio operator. Is that I felt like this is the outlet. This is the kind of like the technical outlet um, that I wish that I had.
Yeah.
Um, that I had to give up basically when I stopped being a coder. And uh, I think as that it kind of supplements, and then you'll work with Arduino, or you'll work with like Kyle with Node-RED, or you'll work with something that's some cool aspect of digital radio. How to make a reflector, for example, is one of the things that I got into. Um, and all of those things, they end up supporting something you want to do in your life that ham radio fits really well into. So that's kind of how I would look at ham adjacent, is that
Yeah.
it's the integration point of ham radio to something else that you want to do in your life.
Yeah, I agree. Ham Radio Hobby says I've seen a bunch of rocketry channels that need ham licenses to run their telemetry equipment on their hobby rockets. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
This is what we're talking about. And
And the
then
funny thing is, whenever I talk about things like weather balloons, uh, I get a lot of friends who they have no interest in ham radio at all. But once you talk about weather balloons, and then the like APRS tracking of these micro balloons that get launched, and they're really, really into that. And they actually consider becoming a ham just from that. And I'm like, well, what is it about that? It's just basically telemetry, APRS. Why is that the hook? But everyone's different, and I don't have I don't really have insight into what everyone's interested in and what gets them into ham radio. But I just found it really odd that, yeah, that's like a common thing, young and old. I've had a lot of people be very interested in balloon launches and how do you track this thing. And
yeah,
then when you start talking about, oh yeah, you can put these little tiny transmitters and it'll tell you where it is on a map, they're like, whoa, I got to get a ham license.
yeah. So I have an example too, but I wanted to throw it back to the chat if I could for a sec. I wanted to ask the chat again. Do you have anything that you've done in the last, I don't know, a few years or anyway, that is ham adjacent? I expect there's going to be a lot of great things. We have Kyle in, so Kyle, you can't say Node-RED because and that's already been mentioned. I used a little switching. Actually used an Arduino and a little switch that I got off of Amazon. I made a video of this, and I used it to create with a Baofeng, create a fox hunting transmitter. So it turns on and off and transmits Morse code every 2 minutes, I think, and then it turns off. And so it was a ham radio, a switch, and an Arduino, and a power source, and it that was definitely ham radio adjacent because it's a transmitter, although maybe not as great as example as some of the things like the astrology and the balloons and stuff like that. But in chat, if you guys don't mind, if there's something that you've done, throw it in there and let us hear what you've done that's interesting, because it is quite diverse, the things that you can do with ham radio that are ham radio adjacent. So, all right, we're at the 15-minute mark, Dennis. We're already almost there, so we'll circle back around and get some of those comments and questions. But is there anything else that you want to mention? I mean, how's the you did kind of mention your podcast, and this will be out on your podcast. But so, what's your philosophy there? We've talked about you being busy and your priorities are elsewhere. Do you have any type of? Is it just kind of random, or is it? Well, let me just back up. People who don't know, the podcast is called Hamdom Thoughts, right? And so you can kind of tell people maybe where that's at, and then maybe some of your philosophy.
Yep. Hamdom Thoughts was put together in 2020 during the lockdown. And I think it was also the time that the YouTubers bunch kind of got started and started meeting as a group and talking about, different YouTube stuff that they could do and coordinating the playlists and all that. Um, in fact, Charlie was my first guest.
That's right. That's true.
And you did come back as well for a
Yeah.
second interview.
Yeah.
But it started off, I thought I would have a lot to talk about in ham radio. And so I had this kind of like podcasting recording mixer that was connected to my computer. And I was like, why don't I start a podcast? And I thought I would have different topics. And it originally started like that. I had one about digital sounds and I recorded all the different digital modes, and people could kind of discern what they were based on listening to them. And then I did one about number stations, I believe. And that was very early on. But then I settled upon just having interviews one on one with people, kind of like what we're doing now.
Right.
And I found that that was very engaging. I learned a lot about everyone I had on the show. We would go off on tangents that I never anticipated we would, even come up with. And so I just kept on doing that because one, people really liked it. And two, I found out that it just kind of runs itself. I would try to set it to less than an hour, but we would always go over. And,
Yes.
as long as twice as long as that. And I found that it was really a fun time just getting to know all my friends, people I knew online, but just getting to know a different side of their operations and their life. And from there, it just kind of took off. But nowadays it's kind of like I still have this list of people, I need to reach out to this person and this person and schedule a time, but I just haven't. And
Kind of like me with
people are
project over here.
yeah, people are more like, Dennis, what are you doing? Come on.
Yeah, people really do like your podcast. And I enjoy it too. So I understand, why they keep reaching out to you and stuff. So it's just going to be when you get time. There's no goals set at all on that. It's just kind of whatever, huh?
Yeah. As of right now, I'm going to finish out the year, then just try to get a little bit more organization around my big list that I was telling you about of all the different endeavors, and try to
Right.
really dedicate time to each of those. I think it was Steve Jobs who talked about saying no in order to get better at whatever you are working on. I got to figure out what that no list is, and
Right.
figure out what to say no to and what to actually devote energy to.
Well,
And then, just even having a day job. I mean, you got to acknowledge this, that after a week doing your day job, sometimes you have time to do something and you have this gigantic bucket list of something to do. But then you look at it and you're just like, I just want to sit here and watch YouTube for 8 hours. I don't want to work on something right now. And that's
yes.
actually happened quite a bit in the past few months for me. I just be like, I just want to veg out. I don't want to go out. I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit here and do nothing. I want a nothing day.
Yes.
Or at least a nothing weekend, right? And,
Yes. I'm the same way. You can ask around. I like to just take an afternoon and not do anything. Just hang out with the family. And there is the whole family dynamic that we haven't even talked about, right? It's the whole demands of the family, which are entirely separate from everything else. And in my opinion, and probably most of people's opinion, that should come before anything is the family. And that can take a lot of time, especially depending on what you got going on. Sometimes there's crises in a family, and it takes more energy than sometimes when everything's running smoothly. So, there's ups and downs there.
There's that too. Is the whole aspect of unexpected things just, kind of sweeping your legs out from under you. And on top of that, family vacations and just, wanting to spend quality time.
Yep.
And it's just that's why I really greatly admire people who are just keep sticking at it, keep producing, because I'm like, you're lucky. You found your focus, and you're going at it, and that's great.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We got Scout 75 says, I've been going down the Laura Meshtastic. What is it? How do you say that?
Meshtastic.
Meshtastic. Oh yeah, there you
I
go.
think he
The lower.
misspelled it, but it's meshtastic. Yeah.
Yeah, meshtastic. Rabbit hole over the last few months, starting to grow a mesh network in my neighborhood with others. That's an interesting endeavor. I've kind of went down that rabbit hole and then I came back out of it, and I've never been back since. But that's fun. What do you think,
I would
Dennis?
love to do something like that. That's just another area, but I would like to ask Scout what, like, does he just talk to his neighbors about it, or are they all nerds as well? I mean, how do you get your neighborhood to buy into something like this where you could actually form a mesh? Because
Yeah.
I have my Arden nodes, and I just had, like, 3 nodes throughout my property basically, and that was it. Like, there were hams all around me in my neighborhood, but just even getting through to them and trying to garner interest, and and not really having, I didn't have much of a selling point. I'm like, well, it would be a network, but yeah, what is that for? are
Yes,
you are you
exactly.
gonna are you gonna have, like, you know webcam showing all the birds hitting my trees, or what? It's like, I had an environment sensor for a long time, so you could tell what the temperature and pressure and humidity was right in my backyard. But since then, I got one of those weather stations that reports it to Weather Underground, so it doesn't even matter. I don't need an Arden version of that.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm curious with Scout. What is he going to use it for, and how did he get his neighbors to buy into it?
Yeah. Hopefully he'll post something in chat and we can get to that. Also, El Juano, I think is how you pronounce this, is his name. I'll just go with L. He says he's looking to the near, hopefully future, to do EME manned project. EME manned project. I'm not sure what does that mean. You think, Dennis?
Well, it sounds to me like, if it's Earth, Moon, Earth,
Manned project, though.
but manned. So when there's someone on the moon,
I don't know exactly what he's saying there.
that would be cool.
To me, that sounds like he's going to go to the moon and back.
Well, there's a lot of countries that are wanting to go back to the moon, right? I think China is one of them.
Yes.
And so maybe it's making contacts when they're on the moon.
I see what you're saying.
That would be cool. That would be like ISS times 1 million right there.
Yep, that's what he says. Yup. So I guess I guess we got it right, or you did anyway.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Very ham adjacent. Okay, so we have 6 minutes left, and so with the remaining time, I wanted to close out the year, I guess. And so you did mention that you have some plans to gather your thoughts and to set some goals, so to speak, and to organize yourself. And this is the perfect time of year to do that, because we always do the New Year's resolutions coming up, right? So let's maybe take the last little bit and talk a little bit about some of our goals and what we have, what we're thinking about. I haven't really thought too deeply about my ham radio goals, or just my goals in general, other than one thing I want to try is to write more articles about my adventures rather than putting them on YouTube. I want to write SWL Thomas Witherspoon. I think it's K. I always forget his call sign. It's SWL. He has a website where he posts all kinds of adventures. He also has a YouTube channel, which is great. But I think it's www.swling, I think is what it's called. SWL.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And on there he has that's a different one, but he has stories, or I guess they're not stories. What would you call them, Dennis? They're trip logs with pictures of different outings that people have done or different experiments. And so I'd like to write more articles for that website and contribute to that a little bit more. I also would like to do that more for some of the clubs that I'm a part of. I'm not really. I have one club that I'm a physical member of, but most of what I do is I am a part of, like, the CW Ops Club and the QRP International Club. Those I'd like to maybe write some articles for as well. So that's kind of one goal of many that I have been kind of mulling around in my mind. What about you, Dennis? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Well, the first thing off the top of my head is that ARDC thing I talked about. I really want to get in there, get involved, and make that side of ham radio accessible to the public. So I don't know if that what their timeline is for that, but it does seem like it's a it once everything's well tested and put through its paces, it's going to really be a boon for mixing the internet space with ham radio. And so I believe that that's going to take quite a bit of, commitment. So I don't want to spread myself too thin, but that's one of the things that I definitely have committed to for 2024. Uh, it's funny because I thought I had everything figured out when I put together Denco as a business, but I really didn't because
Yeah.
there's so many things that I learned this past year on how to do stuff. And I feel like it's finally starting to settle down where I can actually get into a rhythm. So I'm hoping Denko continues to grow in 2024. I hope people enjoy the kits and want to make more. I honestly hope, because you see it nowadays. You see a bunch of people; they're just getting these really really cheap lithium iron phosphate batteries. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people are reviewing them now. I hope that the industry doesn't just, suddenly turn super cheap where I don't even have to do this.
Because then you'll have to
Because
find something else.
I love doing this, but it could turn out that we just get saturated and it's not even worthwhile for me to share these smaller form factor high performance batteries anymore. So
Yep.
if that's the case, then I got to figure out what Denko is going to be all about. Something else, perhaps different kind of kit.
Yep. Well, I'm sure with the number of irons you've got in the fire, you'll figure something out. Thank you to Patrick and also to Mark for reminding me it's K4SWL. Thomas will kill me for that.
Yes, qrpeer.com. I know
Yes.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
qrpeer.com is the website, and like I said, there's all kinds of great information there. There was a couple more ham adjacent comments. There's one here from Ham Radio Hobby. Poda and soda are ham adjacent, depending on how you look at
That's
it.
true.
And this is true
My
because
my big admiration of soda and Poda is that it touches on the whole my other interests like outdoors and camping and being in nature. And I used to rock climb in a different life, and I really feel like that aspect of like mountaineering plus radio is a perfect merging of two great hobbies.
agreed. I agree. And then back to Scout 75's answer to your question. You can go ahead and read it if you want.
Oh, it doesn't require a license, just download an app. Okay. So it's just kind of like getting everyone around you to check out this new way of talking to each other, basically, via Meshtastic and LoRa.
Yeah.
LoRa stands for long range, basically, and it's like it really is long range. It's like miles of range for those little transmitters.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Cool. All right. Well, I am going to give you the floor one last time to just whatever else you want to talk about for the remaining minute or two, and close it out for us, and then I'll take a final minute and we'll be done. Dennis,
Sure.
I really appreciate you being here, and it's been an enjoyable discussion.
Well, thank you. I really feel like this has been just kind of a ramble for me, but I don't really have anything to point you to because I didn't produce any podcasts lately. I haven't made any YouTube videos lately, but the site for Denko is still up and running. Got a couple kits in stock right now, and I know it's Christmas season. There's a lot of people, saturating the UPS network right now, but yeah, feel free to check it out. And hopefully I will this obviously will be published on Hamdom Thoughts, but hopefully I can get more guests in 2024. And yeah, thank you, Charlie, for just really continuing, because I've watched how you continue with APDZ and just your videos and every single one of your CW key reviews. I love all of those things. I remember when this channel started out, and just seeing how much you've done. It's really great. So yeah, congrats on that, and thanks for having me on again.
All right, Dennis. Thank you so much. One last comment from Adam, a great friend of the channel and just personal friend of both of us. It says 86 DM rambles are good. One of the best voices adjacent to ham radio. And we'll leave on that note. I really appreciate everybody coming. Don't forget, we do this every other week. So January, what is it? Let me look at my calendar here. It'll be the next episode is going to be January 7th. Is that right? Yes. January 7th is going to be Kurt Zogelman again. He is the Ham Ninja, CW Ninja. He's the guy that does all the recordings to help learn Morse code and does a lot of research on how people learn Morse code. So we'll have him back on next. And so I'm going to say 73 to everybody. Thanks again for Dennis and all you in the chat room who've contributed. We will see you in a few weeks. 73. Bye.
73.